All right, when you think of the word dictator, you usually don't think of a positive word. I mean, you look at like who's like a bad dictator. Kim Jong-un, right? Kim Jong-un's a terrible dictator. You can't have his same name. You can't have his same haircut. You got to have a framed picture of him in your home to, I guess, worship him. I don't know. But point is, dictators usually aren't good people. I'm not saying that Kim Jong-un isn't a good person, because on the personal level, if you are on the same hierarchy as Kim Jong-un, I'm sure he's not a terrible person. He's probably just like a regular guy, but he got born into a family that rules and is like a high family sent by the gods or whatnot. So unfortunately, we are forced to, see him in a negative light. But usually dictators are bad. And today I found a video called The Chillest Dictator of All Time. So dictators are usually bad, and maybe this guy will change my mind. Who knows? So yeah, we're going to check it out. I hope you guys enjoy. Go check out the gaming channel and check out the Discord, link in the description below, as well as this video will be linked down there too, because it's not my video, obviously. Let's check it out. The chillest dictators of all time.
Seychelles is a small country tucked away in a corner of the world which hasn't been relevant in almost 200 years. It's a collection of over 100 islands just north of Madagascar, but 99% of its 100,000 odd people live on just 3. The vast majority on only Mahe, an island you can drive from tip to tip in less than an hour. Life here seems easy. Per person, it's the richest African nation, has the highest literacy rate in Africa, one of the lowest death rates, and is the least...
Well, yeah, because it's probably only rich people living there. That's the thing.
The highest literacy rate in Africa, one of the lowest death rates, and is the least corrupt country on the continent. And on top of all that, you get to live here. It seems like an island paradise.
Yeah, it looks like the Florida Keys. It's rich as hell. Everyone that lives here makes $1 million a year.
Which makes it kind of crazy to say that this was the result...
It's just a low-key spot.
...of a quite brutal dictatorship. Modern Seychelles politics and its way of life have been defined by the visions of one man, at a time being one part socialist repressive state and one part tax haven, to be used by foreign banks as a playground for millionaires. The man who Seychelles embodies was France Albert René. Since his violent takeover of the country in 1977, he's directly ruled for over half of independent history, while his party stayed in power until 2020. Not typical of a dictator, he embraced the easy life, often being seen in a button-down shirt and expensive loafers, and never being afraid to take dodgy cash when needed. As a spoiler, Seychelles became rich through export abundance. Per person, they export the most things out of any African country, around $22,000 a Seychellois. Most importantly, through tourism, a lot of tourism, but also things like fishing and yacht registration of all things. It's this bounty of cash which has really allowed Seychelles to invest in the safety net which has made it famously such a nice place to live.
I might go here on my honeymoon. Then tell my wife, actually 20 years ago when I was I was doing this hobby called YouTube, I actually thought of this place. I had it in my mind for a long time, and then she's probably going to think I'm a failure.
But let's back up a little. The islands were administered by the British for around 150 years, seized from the French because they let too many pirates use it as a safe haven. It was then used, of course, as a slave-based plantation society.
Yep, sounds about right.
Slavery was legally banned in the British Empire. It was indentured labor from freed African slaves. Or Malagasy, Chinese, and
so
Indian.
Just slavery, but without the actually just taking the word slavery off of it. Okay.
Coolies. If you couldn't already tell by the pictures, or you're truly colorblind, congrats by the way, Seychelles is a very racially mixed country, and one which didn't see nearly the racial divisions as most other British colonies. The dominant ethnic group, Creole, is a mix of many of these different groups. Put another way, all of these men are Creole. But, politically, the main event of importance before independence...
Is that an island down there? Because...
But...
I don't see anything. Is that supposed to be an island? This one too. There's nothing there.
Politically, the main event of importance before independence was its cotton economy completely crashing, half of all freed people leaving to Mauritius and rebuilding itself as a coconut, vanilla, and cinnamon export hub. That's to say, a poor, crop-based society for the rest of its British history. In fact, René himself was born into a family which administered a coconut plantation. His father wasn't part of the elite sect of society which owned the land, the
What kind of
leftover
roof is
families
that?
from French colonization, the Grand Blancs, but part of a poorer white family. He grew to be resentful of these landowners, and this upbringing would certainly make a mark for how he would run his country. Then, like many other Seychellois,
I wonder did the thought ever cross his mind? That guy, he looks like Donald Trump. I wonder did the thought ever cross his mind that he would be the dictator of the country
went
one day.
abroad to the UK
Probably
for
not.
school, but never liked it, coming back to practice law before again returning to London to work in banking. While there, because he was fluent in French, he was sent off to Jersey to work in offshore banking. Jersey, along with Guernsey, have had a murky status, famously being stashes for Britain's mega-rich to hide funds away from London authorities. This is another model he would replicate in Seychelles. When he finally came back from that, he became involved in politics, especially of African nationalism and decolonization, which, owing to Seychelles' small size and relative peace, it was quite late to. There, he faced his first challenge, James Mancham. Mancham, unlike René, loved the UK. His vision was staying a British colony for now and stacking bans through uninterrupted tourism and offshore banking. That part René agreed with. He also, to the point of his undoing, loved women. While president of Seychelles, somehow
Who doesn't?
finding the time to judge the Miss World beauty pageant. Clergy members would broadly support René because of it, and the Western press never really treated him like a serious leader either. Mancham just always seemed to be on island time. In the last part of the colonial period, he led the Seychelles Democratic Party, while René formed the Seychelles People's United Party. This one pro-UK,
How do
while
you even say
René
spup? Spup?
formed the Seychelles
That's a funny
People's
word.
United Party. This one pro-UK, pro-tourism, and conservative. The other pro-independence, anti-tourism, and socialist. There were 3 parliamentary elections during this period. Each and every one, Mancham won handsomely, despite having similar vote shares. It was a period which saw the development of an American satellite base, which grew to be the island's largest employer, as well as the opening of a period which saw the development of an American satellite base, which grew to be the island's largest employer, as well as the opening of a brand new airport. Tourism boomed almost immediately when the island opened up to the outside world, and voters rewarded Mancham for it. So René, determined to lead his country to independence, became more militant, angry, and frankly fearful of Mancham. He took aid from the Organization of African Unity by portraying himself as the leader of a liberation organization, and would now support total war against reactionary elements, which ended up meaning a string of bombing attacks against the SDP. London didn't take this seriously, wanting to get rid of Seychelles after their east of Suez retreat.
Is this east of Suez?
Yes, Seychelles is east of Suez Canal region.
Mancham, as a result, did start to take more foreign money though, some even from the CIA. In what they're calling the worst CIA-funded government ever, they gave him a few $100s a month and a 10-member intelligence force team. Anyways, after the last election, René decided to join a coalition government with Mancham, despite the fact that they absolutely couldn't stand each other. During this time, they jointly negotiated independence. Yay! Lower the Union Jack, raise the Seychellois flag. Mancham would be president.
And let me guess that René is going to somehow screw him over. and he's going to kill him or
René
something.
prime minister. But also during this time, it was president and René Jack raised
So he was president, he was prime minister.
Seychelles flag.
What's the difference?
Mancham would be president and René prime minister. But also during this time, it was increasingly clear to every possible observer that René wanted to be in charge.
Yeah.
He was gonna coup the government. Pretty obvious was his stockpile of weapons on a small island off of Mahe. But more, Mancham was actually warned by the Kenyan government, a Saudi prince, a guy who was kicked out of René's coup, the UK police, and the CIA that one was coming. But for some reason, he ignored them. Really, the blame's on him. And while he was off in the UK for Queen
They killed his ass.
Elizabeth's Silver Jubilee on the night of June 4th, 1977, it happened. They seized the critical areas of Mahe, the next morning announcing that René was delighted the people chose him to be their leader. 3 people were killed during the coup, including one unarmed SDP leader. Mancham, of course, initially bragged that he was with a supermodel the night it happened, but more seriously blamed the Soviets. But the Soviets
so they didn't kill him. Okay, cool.
no idea what was going on. They blamed the Chinese, and the Chinese blamed the Soviets back. The real culprit was Tanzania, whose Pan-African socialist leader Julius Nyerere aided in training René's gangsters and providing weapons. It was one of the craziest outcomes of the world's newest state. Having only 60,000 people at the time, it would be like if Bermuda were to break out into a dictatorship today. René was obviously not tied to the socialist label. He was more Africanist, if that's a thing, but he ran an officially socialist government. It was more for development and to keep a distance from Western governments, which he absolutely hated, than any sort of advancement of workers. His new constitution would only allow a single party to run, with presidential ballots now just being yes or no questions to see.
One person can run. Yeah, good old scheme. One, yeah, only he can run.
With presidential ballots now
That's fair.
being yes or no questions to see him in charge or not. And not necessarily explicit violence, but
the ballot says yes or yes.
disappearing people would be a common use of force to keep himself in charge. A senior SDP leader and outspoken critic of the regime, Hassan Ali, just vanished one day, only years later revealed to be killed in René's office.
Wow.
His wife had allegedly called René personally to ask him to investigate what his wife had allegedly called
being a whistleblower always isn't
René
good.
personally to ask him to investigate what happened to him. Of course, he didn't know anything, he told her. This was one of the most unique aspects of René's regime. Since it was such a small island,
He didn't know what happened.
everyone knew everyone.
He's got her husband tied up in the room. He's like screaming in the corner. Oh, I've never even heard of him. What are you talking about?
René and his defense minister Ogilvy Berlui would personally involve themselves in the investigations, instead of using independent police forces. It was unlike other brutal regimes where a chain of command could depersonalize the leader from those being killed. It was very personal here. In other cases, they were killed outside the country, most famously with the murder of Gérard Haro, shot dead on his doorstep in the United Kingdom. Other ways to control opposition were mass arrests.
R.I.P.
One time, 21 SDP members were arrested together, some low-key torture, and by encouraging self-deportation through the seizure of
low-key torture. Okay.
And by encouraging self-deportation through the seizure of land and assets. Trying to dismantle the Grand Blanc hold on land, he personally seized a La Digue villa in the process. Another way to control was with the Seychelles Marketing Board, a massive state monopoly which controlled most consumer goods as well as imports. The National Workers' Union would be the one and only labor union in the country, banning all others. But development and
That's monopoly for you.
construction weren't nationalized. They were often given to allies of the regime, like to the wealthy Savy family, which René was connected to via his ex-wife's ex-husband. Unsurprisingly as well, Mr. Contrarian wasn't a big fan of tourism. Agriculture was sucked dry of labor once the airport opened, and people found it much easier to make money in hospitality. René wanted to boost it up again and maybe add industrial fishing to the mix too, to diversify away from tourism and become self-sufficient. This tuna canning plant was his pride and joy. He was so proud of it.
He's got good intentions, I guess.
But by the end of the regime, Seychelles actually ended up importing more food than before. And he just ended up accepting tourist dollars as the main source to build a safety net off of. Free education, free healthcare, free transport, low-cost housing, decent infrastructure, and very much growing wages. Honestly, not a bad trade for letting foreigners get drunk on your beaches. One of his most controversial legacies, though, remains the National Youth Service, an integral part in his eyes of building socialism. It was a camp, like a summer camp, where every Seychellois youngster would be sent out of high school to learn the practical skills René wanted to boost, like animal husbandry and fishing, as well as to be indoctrinated into the regime. The idea was inspired, by the way...
Damn, this is some crazy propaganda.
After a state...
This is like if you go to a school in a democratic state, you have to learn democratic beliefs and vice versa. You have to learn Republican, like that.
Trip to North Korea, which was inspired, by the way, after a state trip to North Korea.
Oh, yep.
Which
sounds about right.
A close ally to René, sending them troops and weapons along with East Germany and Cuba. So as a result of
North Korea super soldier?
Along
what the hell is
a
super soldier?
And Cuba. So as a result of René's economic legacy, even today, around 70% of Seychellois work for the government, where most production is found. But despite being genuinely popular in the islands because of the increasing quality of life, not everyone was enamored with René. 10,000 people left the island during his dictatorship, 15% of the population. His media censorship alienated the upper and middle classes. The national youth didn't like him, although they would end up voting for him later in their lives. The Americans didn't like him. The Soviets didn't like him.
I wonder why that is.
The South
Is it because he's the only choice?
Africans particularly hated him. Seychelles was of deep interest to the apartheid South African government, being the offshore financial center they used to avoid Western sanctions. They saw it as so important to the point of sending a mercenary to go and kill him when he threatened to cut ties with the country. 4 years after René's coup, a counter-coup led by Mad Mike Horay tried to bring Mancham back to power. They came disguised as a South African drinking club, Ye Ancient Order of Froth Blowers, but their weapons ended up being found in customs. After a shootout, the men hijacked an Air India flight and ran away back to South Africa, where nearly all of them were released without punishment. Botched coup attempts also occurred in 1982 and 1987, both from internal security forces, which both saw purges of his...
I can't believe I never heard of these people. This is insane.
...defense force after. When asked what he believed in, René answered that he was red on the outside, but green on the inside. Perhaps nothing encapsulates this better than his mafia-aligned government. One of the key allies through his regime was Mario Ricci, a guy expelled from Italy, Switzerland, and Somalia who ended up in Seychelles. Would you really be surprised if I told you he had some mob ties? Befriending
No, I would
René,
not.
They created the Joint
He looks like the boss.
Seychelles Trust Company, a state-owned enterprise which would organize foreign companies and investments, helping them deal with tax codes, bureaucracy, all that. It was essentially the state-owned vehicle for anybody to evade their law, including for money laundering, drug trade proceeds, or just trying to avoid taxes. Which is why many people...
So, he's like building his own nation, setting his own rules. I mean, he's like playing Minecraft or like Country Tycoon on Roblox.
have given
perhaps
Seychelles the label
create your own country.
the world's only socialist tax haven. Victoria, a town of 20,000 people, held 8 major banks in it during René's day. And throughout this time, he worked with the infamous Gambino family, gave mafia members refuge, as well as used mafia muscles to give
Why is Rick
mafia
Ross?
members refuge,
Why is Rick Ross's album on there?
as well as
What?
used mafia muscles to, make his enemies sleep with the fishies. In 1995, René
Wow, so
also
this guy's like a mafia boss living a life. Can't believe it.
passed the controversial Economic Development Act to let anybody who invested at least $10 million in the country be granted immunity to pretty much any foreign crime.
Oh yeah, sounds like the great place for a pedophile to go.
This had to be revoked 5 years later, though.
Immunity.
Due to the absolute
That's
international
insane.
outrage it caused. By the 90s, after 3 coups and the collapse of both the Soviets and apartheid South Africa, René had the insight to no longer play both sides off each other, but join the Western liberal side. By his own accord, René had
This guy's literally playing like build your own country tycoon.
reversed his coup and state-led development
Make your own
strategy.
rules.
That's right. He was done being a dictator. Just like that. Another new constitution was drafted to turn the country into a multi-party democracy. Mancham made a party.
I got a better idea. Turn it into an AI data center country. Let AI rule it.
This new guy, Wavel Ram Kalawan, who actually lived under René, ran against his party 6 times before his big break in 2020. And then René's own coalition fractured. His defense minister and tourism/youth minister both making parties of their own. But all that didn't matter much. Every election
God, that picture's badass.
René took part in, he won. One of the major reasons he did this was to be able to take loans from the...
Yeah, who's gonna vote against him? It's like he's got mafia bosses living on the island. You don't vote for René. You don't vote for René. We're gonna kill you.
Big 3, the IMF,
Like, what
World
do you do?
Bank, and African Development Bank, which in the 90s had some pretty strict restrictions on lending you money without conditionality. Some of the general conditions were to become a democracy, slash the government budget, raise taxes, and privatize state-owned assets. Various waves of privatization hit Seychelles as the debt grew more and more unsustainable. Frankly, the longer he stayed in power, the more his government resembled Mancham's original vision of Seychelles, a liberal, tourist-filled tax haven. It was also during this time they really hammered out the framework to let foreigners hide money here with a couple of acts, and let foreigners register yachts the cheapest in the world. 2 shady aspects of the current budget which are a legacy of René's personal views of money. In his quest against tourism, René did end up nationalizing 2 hotels, which were eventually sold not back to the original owners, but to a Malaysian firm instead. Foreign capitalists were still preferable to domestic enemies. 60% of his precious tuna cannery was sold to Heinz, ironically actually boosting profits to the government as productivity shot up. In fact, now Seychelles makes a ton of its money through the sale of its land to foreigners, which they can own 100% of. The outer islands are prime real estate for any unsatisfied billionaire to go crazy on. Not that crazy. René stepped down.
I knew a Epstein joke was coming.
Because, get this, my American audience, he thought he was too old at 68 to lead the country. He did lead for 27 years straight
Wow.
after all.
I mean, I'm sure some billionaire will come along and build an AI data center there.
Let him at least live a little on the islands. The next 12 years were led by a René loyalist, James Michel, then succeeded for 4 years by Danny Foray, also a member of their party. On a timeline, here's René's rule, and here's his party's rule. It's no wonder then, especially for such a small country, that René has come to completely dominate it. He only died in 2019, the same year much of the worst things came out about his regime via the Truth and Reconciliation Council.
Oh, really?
His two successors continue to do much of the same things as Democratic René, not Marxist René. Offshore finance, tourism,
I'm sure.
fishing, keeping the moneymakers to keep the safety net. Because they're so tied to the ocean economy, they did lead some efforts to fight the Somali pirates back when that was a whole ordeal. And they've also guilted some more investment by threatening to dig up oil if someone doesn't invest green energy into the country. COVID and the financial crash were understandably big deals for a debt-ridden, tourist-based economy. They made a stock market, a small one, but it's real. Oh, and the Americans are back after shutting their embassy down for 23 years. Pretty much only because of the increasing Chinese influence on the islands. But other than those, most of the political story of the country is tied up in this one man. René was kind of like the left-wing version of Singapore's Lee Kuan Yew. Not a very ideological guy, but certainly convicted that he, and only he, should be in charge. Both ended up presiding over great transformations of their countries, in a benevolent dictator type of way, into the richest in their respective regions. So my one last question to you is, why don't more people know about René when we all gawk over Lee? Duh, there's one
Probably such a small island.
obvious answer. There are no edits of him.
And there they go. All right, banger video, man. I love that. Let me know what you guys thought of the video below. I love learning about history and random nations. I probably would have never known about this guy if I wouldn't have watched this. So yeah, it's always good to learn. That's ultimately what I want to bring you guys. Even if it's 30 minutes a day, you sit down, watch Will Plays Let's All Reacts, learn something you didn't know before. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite part was. Join the Discord. Go check out my gaming channel. This video will be linked in the description below. All props to, what's this guy's name? Hooser? I don't know. But yeah, hope you guys have a great day. And until next time, peace out.